Hey,
Good morning,
Haley,
Brian.
you look beautiful as always.
Thank you. And you've changed your location in the
I
house.
did
Beautiful.
raise out of the house so I can move around. When we lived in our three-story townhouse with elevator, I could have people in, I could do whatever I want on the first floor. He'd be up on the third floor, not hear a thing. Now we're in a two-bedroom single level. So out of respect for the other, we sort of huddle away into the office if we're going to. Oh, when the cat's away.
Nice. And it's
This
interesting.
mouse, this mouse is playing.
Nice. It's good to have some like level of freedom and appreciation for your space
Mhm.
and your time and see different
Yeah.
nooks and crannies of the house differently.
And well, I do that a lot because I love my space. And the things that are around me are things that we've had for many, many years. I'm grateful that we don't have ahead of us any purchases other than, possible health care.
Mm-hmm.
Because the house is done, the art is done. Uh, you never know, when something is going to come along, like a broken air conditioning unit,
No.
whatever. But Haley, before we start recording, we were talking about COVID and how it was impacting our feelings of health or energy. And we both have had the booster.
No, I just had the vaccine.
Oh, you've had just the first shot?
I just did the J&J.
Oh, okay.
It's a
All right.
one-shot vaccine. I don't think I'll be doing the booster.
No, well, wait and see, wait
I
and see.
can see, but yeah, I think it's, we were talking about COVID and I haven't felt great since I've had the vaccine. But I was saying to you that it's sort of hard to just get on that pedestal and say the vaccine caused all of this because there is so much going on else.
Yeah.
I can say that my life has definitely changed like after the vaccine.
Uh-huh.
But I hope now that my health is starting to stabilize and I can get a bit of comfort and confidence that my body has dealt with the vaccine and now I can deal with everything else going on.
Right. And if you are exposed to COVID, it's much less likely that you'll contract it. And if you do, you won't feel much worse than you do right now.
That's my silver lining.
Yeah. My lips to God's ears, right?
There was a moment like right after the vaccine, I had delayed side effects. So my body is quite wonderful in that it waits for me to reach a quiet moment before it's like, and we're going down. And
Okay.
I actually thought that I had COVID. I was like, this is not the vaccine, this is COVID.
Hmm.
And I went and got a PCR and it came back negative. So there are parts of me that were like, well, if I get COVID, it's not going to be any worse than this. So I'm not too afraid of it. But at the same time, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to get COVID on top of this. So I am
Yeah.
being very careful. I'm not going out unless it's with a certain part of people that I know are mostly staying at home.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going, things are coming back here. There's a lot of events going on and I'm not going to the events because I just don't want to put myself in that space of that. And they're all, like here you need to wear a mask still. Vaccination is still a program. So it's much safer, I think, than the US. But it's just not something that I'm willing to put myself at a higher risk right now.
Uh-huh.
I'll wait.
Well, I've had both shots and the booster. And after the first shot, I had some muscle, but I couldn't tell if it was that or the gardening. That's what you don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah. But I'm glad to do it. I go along to get along. I don't feel like I need to take a stand on. There are things that I will take a stand on, especially injustices against people who are marginalized, like lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer people, women, indigenous people, whoever is, I'll speak up. That's my raison d'etre. So on the vaccine thing, you know, I trust, I go along, I don't need to, you know, become a pro-vaccine person. I just, you know, did it because it was the right thing for Ray and me, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
So, but Hayley, I do feel that the containment that all the world has gone through is impacting a lot of us emotionally. That I know that my trigger finger, you know, is quicker. I try to do it all yelling at the television, so the rest of the world doesn't have to hear me.
And
You stupid! Why are you taking that drink? You do not need that drink.
I think that's such a wonderful subject for today, because it has been something that I've made a personal decision about, really in trying to figure out how to best look after myself and best give myself what my body needs to be able to get back up to where it was before.
Yeah.
The decision that I've made is silence. A silence and a disconnect where I'm not putting myself in conversations that are polarizing or part of all of that sort of the dust of COVID. I still think COVID is a divinely timed event. I think it gave everybody a time to really stop, go home, and really think about what's important. And it gave us a chance to see that when we're all at home, the world looks different. We saw that the earth was able to regenerate, like water became clear in many places that were over touristed. I think it gave us a wonderful opportunity to do that. But I think now, as we're starting to move around, we are very unsettled. We're very ungrounded because we don't know how to move around. And nobody's really looking at that. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's really paying attention to the mental health, just the basic mental health of people. And I think it's incredibly scary that suicide rates are through the roof in every single country.
Yeah, especially Japan, I read.
Yeah, it's the suicide rates amongst men. Men are more likely to commit suicide than women. Except
in Japan, Hayley, they said the women right now, in the late, I think some of it for the kids, especially in places like Japan, that their life is around schooling, and such an important thing that you lose your identity and your sense of contact. But, it's easier for people like me to talk about the benefits of COVID than it would be if I owned a small restaurant and lost it, couldn't pay employees, couldn't pay.
Even then, let's talk about the mental health of those people when so many people have lost everything.
Yeah.
There's really no support for them, either financial. I think the financial support is starting to dwindle. And there's no real programs to help people that lost everything in COVID. There's no home mortgage support programs.
Well, there was the no eviction.
There was no eviction.
And it's still in place. Pardon?
That's coming to an end relatively soon. They keep trying to bring it to an end.
Yeah, I think they'll extend it, but I don't know what's going on in other countries about that. But so let's talk about you. Let's personalize it. You're not getting into conversations. I think that's really smart.
No, and I'm really not speaking to people that have shown to be polarized.
Yeah,
I know that's a very strong statement, but it is really cutting down my circle around me to a very few key people that are a bit more towards the center and a bit more into listening and speaking and not just speaking.
Well, and Hayley, those very people are the ones that you'd want around you if you were dying, right? I mean, this sort of, it helps discern. It helps you discern.
Good word.
Who who in my life is really important, and with whom can I be present and be present to me in a way that does not vex my soul.
Right. And I think the difference between discernment and judgment is so important.
Yeah.
And, I've mentioned a couple times that my mantra for last year and this year is don't be the contradiction. So every time I've sort of faced somebody that I've been kind of like aghast, I've been like, whoa. I kind of take myself out of that. I'm like, okay, where's the mirror here? What are you doing here that might be encouraging this energy, or are you even doing this? And that's where, continually trying to be in that space of discernment versus judgment.
I haven't posted a lot of anything original on Facebook in a while, which is unusual for me. And I have, I'm sort of not writing my column as often.
Yeah.
I haven't started the memoir. I feel I'm not ready to say stuff yet. I'm the mason jar filled with water and sand is really still
really shook up. Now, do you think that that's discernment, or do you think that's fear of somebody, because everybody is so heated? Is there a fear there of if you put something out, it's going to just anger people and you're going to get that response? Or do you think you're more on that side of discernment where you're like, I think it's better now just to be quiet?
Both, I think, but although with my Facebook friends, 99% of them ask to be friends with me. So, and when they ask, I always go through their posts to see what kind of mood they create with their posts before I accept them. And so I'm not particularly worried about people on my Facebook group, because I make clear, look, my Facebook page is my treehouse, and these are the rules, and you can climb up and join me, but you can't cause trouble, and you got to be nice to your neighbor, right? Like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
I love the idea of the treehouse.
Yeah, you guys have your own treehouse, and if and if you let me in, I'm going to abide by your rules, but I don't want any back and forth. I don't want people to get sexual. I got this one guy that I finally let go of. I try not to. I really try hard not to let go. But he was persistently aggressive sexually in his post and online, not just private messaging. And I thought, you know what? I can deal with it, but I don't want my friends to have to think, oh, this is embarrassing. Oh, this is uncomfortable. How are we supposed to respond or leave Brian alone and let him handle this?
Right.
So, but going back to your question, I don't want to unintentionally trigger people. My jumping in and this whole Trump thing, people already know how I feel. So again, I've said it before, I don't want to throw red meat to people who think like I do, because it's not accomplishing anything. I think we really need to be focused. And I was going to ask if we could talk about this today.
We're on the same page again.
Well, but what I wanted to talk about was, okay, and this brings me right to it, Hayley, which is great. The prayer of St. Francis, which that I try to say every day in the morning and have for years. But it really lays out, okay, this is your goal for the day, right? Make me an instrument of your peace. Okay, now how can you justify throwing red meat and saying that you're there an instrument of peace? Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Right?
Yeah.
I can add to the hatred people have, and I can cleverly, put words together to say, oh my God, he's right. That,
Yeah.
But how do you do that and be promising that you're an instrument of love, and where there's injury, pardon, where there's doubt, faith, where there's despair, hope, where there's darkness, light, where there is sadness, joy. I mean, you take those and you say, this is my goal. This is what I'm asking you to do with me today. And then you get in the car and what happens? You know, you're filled with judgments
Yeah.
because you're human. But then just before you express that, you're hoping that the pledge you made in the morning, you remember.
Right. I think I love that verse. Is it a verse or is it a poem?
Well, it's the first part. Yeah, there's a second part too. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to understand as to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it's in pardoning that we're pardoned, and it's in dying that we're born to eternal life. Now, you know, if we really embrace that, then our job is peacekeeper.
And you know what I've come to, and you know, I have my greatest teacher is my meditations and prayers, and my prayers are answered. You know, it may not always be what I want to hear, but they're answered, and I do get information. And you know, in my choice to silence and somewhat disconnect has been coming back to that prayer and making sure that first I'm doing that with myself. When I'm doubting, am I choosing hope?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm judging, you know, am I looking that back around to myself and looking at myself that way? Because I think we are inherently such awful talkers to ourselves. We're our worst critic. And I think if you can start to practice that prayer just in terms of how you treat yourself, then it becomes easier to be that peacekeeper in the community.
Yeah, because you start off as you become your best friend, right?
And I think that's, you know, really what I'm being asked to do is really make sure that at your core, you are 100% in that channel of love, of peace, of kindness. And once you're 100% in that channel with yourself, then you can go out and, you know, be a part of these conversations and not get triggered. Because as much as I don't want to intentionally trigger, I also don't want to be triggered.
Right. But I think we have to accept, though, that we are going to be filled with judgments, that is human, that's the ego protecting itself. And don't beat yourself up for having judgments. Just don't express them.
And I think, you know, don't express them
unless they need to be.
You know, immediately forgive yourself for having those judgments.
Yeah.
And then forgive, like, it's such a learning, I found, at least in my path. It's such a learning to be able to take the silence and be able to be like, whew, that really triggered me. Oh yeah, it triggered me because I totally judged them. And then the minute that I judge them, I lose hope. And then I'm in a place of, all of this sucks, what's the point? What's the point of that prayer if nobody wants to play?
Right, if I'm the only one saying it.
Immediately there, I've separated from everything that I want to be.
And everybody doesn't have to be what I want to be in order for me to achieve that.
Yeah, this is a very personal path, and this is who I want to be, because I think that if I am this person, I will make the greatest impact, and I will be able to be that center peacekeeper in a way that makes me honorable and proud of myself. I think it is just like I have the divine right to choose my path, as does every other being on this planet have the divine right to their path. It is my wish that I can, again, not be triggered by that choice and what path they're taking, and just be like, I have a divine right, you have a divine right.
Mhm. Hayley, if you believe that you get one shot at this, if you know, unless you believe in the migration of the soul, if you believe you get one shot at this, are you living your life as fully and happily as you feel able?
I don't believe I only get one shot at this. I very much firmly believe in reincarnation and parallel lives, all that kind
Right.
of stuff. However, that doesn't give me an out. My choice and my path for this lifetime is to be the absolute best that I can be. And I do, you know, my wish is that I can be the highest evolution of humanity that my soul has ever lived.
In some ways, if you believe, I was just thinking, in some ways, if you believe in the migration of the soul, each life that you live is creating a dowry for the next
Right.
visit.
And
You may not be conscious, you won't be conscious of it,
you
but
may
if your
not be
soul
conscious.
is elevated, you know, if you come back at the state of elevation that you achieved.
I mean, that's a pretty cool life. I'll
Yeah,
support that for myself.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and I think it's walking the talk. If, you know, if I'm going to believe in reincarnation and that after this lifetime, there's another lifetime, I'm going to do my best to make sure that in that next lifetime, I'm set up the best possible way.
Yeah. You got money in the bank.
I got money in the bank, and you know, I'm not repeating these same lessons again and again and again. Like, that would be
Hopefully.
really cool for the next lifetime for me to just, you know, have that dream lifetime where it's like, this is, everything is beautiful, you know?
Mhm.
That would be pretty amazing.
Uh,
Maybe I'll do so well in this lifetime that I elevate out a few men.
and you won't even be back, and you won't need to
And
be.
then I'll be like an angel guide for other people. I'm cool.
Right. Who knows? Do you understand how some people think this conversation is silly?
Yes. And I allow them that.
Mm-hmm.
They have a right to believe that. And I think that they have a right to their beliefs, just like I do.
Well, they have a right to create a life for themselves that reflects their belief,
Absolutely.
as long as it doesn't impact in a negative way my life, you know?
And, you know, if, again, that's part of the whole silencing and disconnecting, it's like, and we were talking about this in another conversation, you know, the whole thing about second chances. It's like, right now, we're not connecting, but later on, we might be able to.
Right. Right.
So, you know, I think everybody's entitled to their beliefs and to create the life that they want. But just as much as I respect your right to that life, please respect my right to my life and my beliefs.
I had coffee the other day with a man whose life has been totally transformed by his association with the Center for Spiritual Living, and impacted his marriage, impacted his worldview. That's pretty cool, you know, if a rough and tumble guy can be so impacted by thought, positive thinking, that it turns their life around. That's the hope, isn't it?
That's an interesting thing when you say that's the hope. Is that your
Well, it's
hope?
the hope. It's the hope that I have. You know, I've told you this before, but one of my favorite movie scenes is Scrooge waking up and realizing that, you know, it's still Christmas Day and he still has it, you know, and he's a new person. He's not going to be the one he was before. And so it's not redemption. Some people will want to call it redemption. He didn't go out and go to mass, you know, to church, but his style of being in the world changed. He wasn't suspicious. He wanted to give. And so when I say that's the hope, I guess my hope for everybody is that they have moments in their life in which they see themselves and the world differently and less fearfully.
And I shared that hope. That is my hope too, that, you know, people will get to see how beautiful they are and how amazing, you know, they really are without all of the labels and the stereotypes and the would, should, coulds. It's, I hope, and it is, that hope is a huge motivator for me and an inspiration for me. And I think that's what I hold sacred. I was talking about this yesterday with one of my dear friends. You know, one of the things that her and I both found that we lose hope on is when people don't acknowledge the sacredity of something, you know, that spirit, the soul, the light. And again, it comes down to, I can't let that change my hope. I can't let that influence.
Well, it's a judgment about them.
Your judgment.
And you get stuck in that judgment.
You get stuck in it. And the only person that it's really harming is me. You know, it's slowing everything down that I'm trying to do and trying to create. So being able to really, for me at least, quieten and really start working a little bit more harder and disciplined on St. Francis's prayer, but with me, like turning it around and making sure that I'm fully embodying that prayer, so that when I'm out and about, it's much easier for me to be in that space of discernment than judgment.
Let's say you're on an airplane and you're sitting directly in front of two people who are fighting across the aisle over masks, wearing masks. I mean, this just recently happened where they came to blows, right? There was actually had this, I mean, the incidence of air rage has just skyrocketed.
It's, yeah.
What responsibility, what is your instinct in that situation? Do you keep quiet? Do you speak up? And if you do speak up, what do you say? Because we've just said, you know, make me an instrument of your peace.
What I would hope that I do in that situation, because being in the situation versus talking about it, two very different things.
It is.
I hope that I would take the time to just really like put a bubble of love, man. And I know people think it's silly, but really just amp up how much love I'm radiating so that it can at least calm. And then, you know, I need calling the people that can actually do something about it, like the air hostesses, and letting them take care of it. That's what they're there for. That's what they need to be doing. And they're trained in it. They're the ones that have the ultimate sort of know-how. You know, me getting involved in that, why? Like, you know, telling somebody to put their mask on a plane and disciplining them right there and then, I don't have that right.
No, I was thinking more of calming down.
The calming down is more about, that's when I just really get super centered, super grounded, and I just try and radiate as much love as possible to the point where I feel exhausted. I try and raise that frequency throughout the entire plane. So whether or not it does something, I think it does something, because people always comment on how calm my energy is and how when they're around me, they just immediately calm down. So if that's what I can do, then I'm going to do it. I do believe that it makes that I'm doing something.
Well, I like, you know, your thought that you have to give the flight attendant first crack at it, because that is their job. My style would be, oh, I'm much more qualified because of my, you know, centeredness. I can do. But you're exactly right. You have to give the people who are in charge the opportunity to do their work. Now, when they can't, if they get in trouble, that's when other passengers often jump in and get involved.
And I always always, one of the greatest things that I love about life is that the unsung hero always pops up. So I love being able to look for those heroes. And I think, again, all of these, everything's connected. And whether I need to be a hero in that moment or you need to be a hero in that moment, like something happens where humans all of a sudden become their absolute best.
Uh-huh.
And I love that. And I think
Yeah, I do too.
whenever hostesses or the, people that are supposed to be in charge of the situation are overwhelmed, the people that stand up, man, they're extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
They, like good always, always overcomes. Love always wins.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because one of the things that really shocked me over this last weekend is I was invited to a friend's house to meet this one woman who just moved here, is into energy and holistic healing. And she was like, oh, you need to meet her. She's great. You'll love, you two will totally connect. And we were talking, and she was going into how she is one of those people that will freely discipline other people. And I was just like, what? Wow. And it really shocked me to the point where, and I didn't say anything to her, but when I got home, I was just like, wow. Like it was such a, it sucked the air out of me that when I got home, I had to okay, you're fine, you're fine.
Because she said that because she what? Said that
she was giving examples of how she has no problem, being that person that tells people how to behave better if they're not behaving well. One example is her partner or boyfriend was late for his flight and missed his flight. And she heard about it. He called her and she immediately went into, this is what you always do. And I can't believe you do this. And you need to be better. And this is where you need to work. And now I'm going to help you work on it. I was just like, dude, chill out. He's just,
I'd be an ex-boyfriend with that one.
he's just missed his flight. And she's like, no. He needs to know that he messed up, and he needs to know right there and then that he messed up.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would be attracted to that energy.
Yeah, and I was just like, okay. And she was giving other examples too, and of feeling like, and I think this has a lot to do with where we are with a lot of people right now. They feel like they are the right person to discipline other people in certain situations. Like everybody's has the responsibility to discipline other people. And I'm just, that just shocks me. And I was sitting this weekend, I'm like, why are you so shocked by this, to the point where you feel winded?
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting dynamic. And I think being here in Mexico, I haven't encountered a lot of that. There has been this one case where an American woman was walking down the main street here, shouting at everybody with a mask on and telling them that there's no scientific evidence that a mask works and you're being hoodwinked. And it was just like, nobody paid attention to her. That was the closest I'd got to that kind of energy. And then it was right in front of me and I was like, holy moly, that's a lot of, is it anger? I don't know. But it was interesting.
Well, anger and fear, you know.
And it's sad too. It's just like, whew. I don't know.
I like to think that I would act. See, that's the other thing, discerning how to act, appropriately, so that it's not about you. You're taking in consideration the person's divinity, and their rights, whatever rights they have guaranteed to them by whatever country they live in. There's a lot to take in with living.
And I think it's really hard to be human right now.
Yeah.
There is so much going on. There's not just the whole COVID thing and am I safe? Now it's Is the US economy about to tank? No, it's fine. We're about to have the best stock market. I was looking at a comparison thing, and CNBC within a 3-day period had completely opposing headlines. The first headline was the US is on track for the worst stock market crash. 3 days later, the headline was something along the lines of why this is going to be the strongest stock market ever.
Oh,
And it's just, I think whichever way that you're looking at this, it's really hard to find your center.
mm-hmm. And not worry about, one of the things that people my age take some comfort in is that they're not going to be around to deal with some of the stuff that they say is coming our way.
And then you read a headline that's like, hey, you're all going to live till you're like 120. And then the kids that are born now are going to be 150, 160.
And who wants that unless they have a body that lasts till that?
Well, the bodies are supposed to be lasting because of the advances in medicine and technology and all that kind of stuff. So the bodies will last. But it's just, I think it is really tough to be human. And then we have like all of the cosmic solar system stuff going on, earthquakes in crazy places, volcanoes, floods, storms. It's hard to, I think it's really hard to be human right now.
And so how do you find in that, all of these situations, where do you find your solace? Where do you find that life is worth living? And I look forward to,
with God. I sit with God. I've been sitting a lot with God. And that's very joyful for me right now. And really, yeah. And then I have been trying to just send messages of love, just whether it's, again, I'm like the same as you. I haven't been posting, doing any kind of content. Just because there hasn't been that, I don't know, that inspiration to do things. So I have been like, if I'm going to post something, it's going to be about love and are you okay? And admitting that life is really hard right now.
So when you find solace with God, describe that, if you would. Are you meditating? Are you sitting with your eyes closed? Or how often do you do it?
I don't really time it. Sometimes it can be 5 minutes and sometimes it'll be an hour and a half that feels like 5 minutes. But really it is, if I can sit and with my eyes closed and just sit with God. And he teaches me, like, be taught by God. And that's where I get these kind of things where it's like, make sure that you're first looking after yourself, that your level of self-care is about how are you talking to yourself. When you're losing hope, what are you losing hope in? And then it's, if I can sit with that, like have a very disciplined practice of sitting, eyes closed and very focused, then throughout the day, as I'm doing things, I'll just be like, oh, hey, God, just keeping that connection of like, hey, God.
Do you think that is easier to do as a single person than it would be if you were in a relationship?
I started my practice when I was in a relationship. So I found
but your schedule is yours alone now. If you were in a relationship, your schedule includes, the person that you're with. You keep it sync with.
I don't think it has to be, for everybody, it needs to be sitting down. That's just where I'm at right now and what I need. I think that if you're washing the dishes, that's meditation. You can have a moment of being like, oh, hey, God, or whoever that is for you. I think if you're with your kids and you're driving your kids somewhere, that's a moment to be like, oh, hey, God. When you drop them off and you're driving to the next place, that's a moment to be like, oh, hey, God. Anytime I think that we can become fully present in the beauty that is actually around us, like look at a tree, look at a cloud, look at humanity, and regardless of how good or bad we're thinking, we're still beautiful. That's a moment of, hey, God, and none of that needs to be scheduled.
And when you say, hey, God, going back to the basics, Who, what, where, when, how is it that you're talking to?
Who is it? It's
Yeah.
God. It's not a
Yeah.
man, it's not a woman. It's a massive white, crystalline, pure thing that is joy.
Yeah.
You know, I can't, there's, when I sit with God, there is no sadness. There is no sadness.
God is a human construct? Do animals have a sense of God?
Yes. Plants have a sense of God. Everything has a sense of God. It's within them. It's the Holy Spirit. That is God. You know, I think this idea, you know, the word God, G-O-D, that's a human construct, just as L-O-V-E is a human construct. It's, for me, God is the word, just because, I don't know, it's just the word that, boom, I'm in that energy. God isn't, like I said, for me, God is not a man or a woman. God is not a human, like there's no human hand. But there, God is a sense of energy and a sense of light.
I find that as I get older, I'm less needing to be vigilant about the words.
Mm.
If I know that you use the word God, for many years, I hated the word because I felt like it had been taken over by people I didn't respect. And they were using it as a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And so universe appealed to me, and love appealed to me, and create, Holy Spirit, whatever.
Force, yeah, all these different words.
So I would avoid it, you know. And if you used God, I would use universe back, not in a hostile way.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say universe. Now I'm finding that it doesn't really matter to me. You know, if you say God, I'll say God, because I don't disagree with what basically you're talking about. And I like that. I mean, there are things about getting older that I really like. And one of them is
Calming down.
not sweating the small stuff.
Yeah.
And realizing that it's all small stuff.
Yeah, and you know, for me, I go through phases, because sometimes I call God Sophia, because I've also, you know, Sophia energy is one of the things that I very much resonated with. I call God.
Where's that? Where's that coming from? Sophia is an S-O-F-I-A?
S-O-P-H-I-A.
Okay, Sophia.
Sophia.
But where's that come from?
So there are some spiritual people that believe that the creator is Sophia.
Where'd they come up with that name?
I have no idea.
It's like Abraham Hicks. Where'd they come up with that name?
I mean, Abraham, that name was given to her by them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, somebody channeled, and the name that they were given was Sophia, and that created sort of a movement. Same as God, you know, somebody channeled God. You know, it was the sound that they put letters to. I can use creator. I used to use source, and I don't really use source very much at all now. I used to use spirit. I don't really use spirit very much now. Yeah, it's like God is really it right now, is the thing right now. And it's, you know, the words that we come up with. One of the things that I've been teaching over the last probably 2 weeks now, has been the redefinition of love, and allowing people the permission to not use the word love, use whatever other word feels like it should be. Because I think our idea of love is so disturbed a lot of the time.
Why? Why is that?
I think based on our experiences of childhood life, and
Okay.
I think it limits us in terms of love. And
Yeah,
understanding what true love is, what unconditional love is.
I just heard from a family member about how they've been carrying for many, many years upset feeling about something that happened years and years ago. And I was unaware of it. And for me, it felt really small and insignificant, but to them was huge. And I've come to the point in my life of saying, you know, people did the best they could.
Mm-hmm.
And that person found that freeing, that, you know, the people who hurt her didn't do so intentionally, and they were doing the best they could. They were human. They made a
good. And don't allow that to be your definition of love.
And don't allow it.
Don't allow that to be your definition of love.
You mean your negative experience?
Yeah.
Well, I would allow believing that people do the best they can as a part of love.
As a part of love, but don't let that limit your definition of love. And I think that that's where we get so caught up with love, is that we believe that that's what love is. So we go looking and we find comfort in that love.
Uh-huh. Well, that's why I really love The Art of Loving.
Yes.
The book, because Erich Fromm made very clear, you know, that there are different kinds of love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, some of the most delightful experiences of love are when it's really, really hard to love, but you do anyway. Where when I can love and there's nothing that you get out of it except for the feeling that, you know what, that feels right.
Right.
That feels right. And it feels right to call that love.
Mm-hmm.
You may say what you just did was forgive, or what you just did was be committed. You know, what you just did was fortitude. Well, that's the same as being committed. Yeah. Okay. So those are qualifications.
That was a stepping point into getting you into love.
Well, and they're all aspects of love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, forgiveness is an essential aspect of love. To give you an example, the dog ate my dinner 2 nights ago.
Speaking of unconditional love.
Oh my God. You know, I came home, I cook in the morning, and I had sliced zucchinis, happened to be on sale. So I sliced these 3 zucchinis, which made 6 halves, you know, scored them, olive oil, herbs, baked them, then added the tomato sauce, then mozzarella cheese, and left them on the stove to bake finally when I got home, you know, because that would only then take, you know, 10 minutes. And I come home and where are they? And he ate them all, you know, oh my goodness, was I upset. Because it's hard to not personalize. I am so good to you. I can't believe you did it to me. You have your own. I feed you. I give you your own dinner. I give you great stuff. You come over and beg, and I give you stuff. How could you eat my dinner?
And I don't eat your food.
I don't eat your food. Get away from me. No, I do not want you near me. Go away. and it took me a little while and realized this is stupid. He's a dog and he's going to eat whatever he can get his mouth on. And you're the one who left it within paw reach. So you could have put it in a cold oven, you know that he's done this before. Why didn't you protect it? Why do you blame him?
You protect your dinner.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I don't know how comfortable you are talking about this, but he has had the 4 biggest poops he's ever had.
Man. Maybe he felt like he needed a bit more greens in his life.
Oh my goodness. He hasn't ever seen foodies turn. I mean, clearly I'm cutting up broccoli and he'll come over. I'll say, you're not gonna like this. You are not gonna like this. But I'll give him a piece and chomp, 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 chomp. It's broccoli, tomato. So at any rate, I realized, look, it's not your fault. It's my fault. And so let me
The forgiveness of you too, like
forgiveness, acceptance.
cereal for dinner.
Yeah. Well, no, I can do better than that. I heated up some leftovers that were very good. But I learned the lesson, 2 big ones. One is that when you love something or someone, you love knowing who they are.
Yeah.
Right?
And who they are
That's-
presently.
He's gonna miss a flight occasionally. That's who he is. He's
Like,
distracted. You
wow.
cannot change. You're not going to change the person. If you do, they're living their entire time with you, scared of upsetting you, right? And boy, I don't want that to be my legacy to somebody, that they're
No.
looking forward to my death so that they can finally do what they want to in
They're
life.
afraid of me.
Yeah.
No.
How we doing on time?
Gotta get cracking, wrapping up.
Wrapping up.
But what a good subject to wrap up on, love. Maybe that will be our next chat. We can talk about love.
As if we haven't already, but I think talking about love is great.
I think
You know,
let's talk about love. And we
yeah.
can use the prayer as sort of an entry into what does that love mean?
What is it, love? Yeah.
Hmm.
What is love?
You know?
It's not being a rug. Love is not making yourself a rug on which people can walk. That's not.
No.
That's not self-love.
So
But it's also not
we
being
talk about
quicksand that as soon as somebody walks on it, they sink because
Right.
they haven't met your expectations.
Yeah.
All right. We're talking already and it's save
We'll
this
talk
for the
about
next.
love. All right.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you. And I mean it
And I do too, in the real sense of the word.
in the real sense.
All right. Talk soon.
Bye, Hayley.